don't do me like this. The Audi S3 is back, and Liam's had it, what, about a week? And there's already issues with it.
If you've not been keeping up to date with the Audi S3 build, then let me keep you up to date.
I bought this Audi S3, which was in a pretty bad way for my friend Liam.
I surprised him with it, and I've been slowly rebuilding it and modifying it to the point where it's at now. Now, after repairing this thing and finally getting it on the road, most of the modifications have been sort of visual. They've been cosmetic.
Apart from the air suspension, which does raise the ride height and also lower it as well, and the ram air induction kit, which we thought we might as well have changed because the original airbox was smashed to obliteration.
Now, today we're going to be doing an upgrade, which is needed on all Audi S3s, but Liam's had the car for about a week, and we're already having teething problems with the car, or perhaps it's just Liam.
He's managed to lose already the grille, which goes inside this section of the bumper, and as this is an RS3 style front bumper, it's pretty hard to find a replacement for him.
It's also getting a weird intermittent coolant issue, which we'll get onto.
But the one thing that definitely needs upgrading is the exhaust.
The best way I can explain the sound of an Audi S3 standard is, well, it kind of sounds like a Hoover. It's got to be possibly one of the worst sounding cars from standard with that soft limiter and, well, that Hoover sound. But today, hopefully, we're going to improve that and, well, not destroy it.
Now, we'll clip away to some drive-by shots here, but this car sounds so bad that... is it even worth it?
Now, if you remember in the last video where I wrapped and installed wheels, I also installed the Maxton Design side skirts, the rear spats, and the Maxton Design rear diffuser. The only thing missing was the front splitter. I did buy one, but it was for an S3, and we have an RS3 style front bumper. So now, Maxton has saved us with, hopefully, this RS3 front splitter. Now, I'm hoping this splitter fits a lot better. With the bumper being an RS3 style bumper, it's not an S3 bumper, or neither it is an RS3 bumper. It's sort of somewhere in between. But with the S3 front splitter coming a little too short, this RS3 splitter seems to fit way better than the S3 one.
Yes, that is looking so much better and so much more aggressive on the front end. I can't wait to see it aired out with that splitter on now, but that's going to be absolutely touching the floor.
Now, I do really need to assess this sort of intermittent coolant issue, as it could be quite bad or it could be quite an easy fix, but I know I want to get onto the fun stuff first.
Oh, look what we have here. This is a catback exhaust system from Stone Exhaust.
Now, I've used loads of different exhaust companies before, but I've never used Stone Exhaust, so this is going to be a good time to try this thing out.
So here is the system, which is looking absolutely sick. It's valvetronic as well, so you can open and close the valves, but we'll explain how that works later. And then we've got these carbon exhaust tips. You can choose gloss or matte. We've gone for gloss just to sort of match the rest of the glossy looks on the Audi S3. This is gonna look sick. But is it gonna sound sick?
And another thing that I picked up, because I just wanted to finish this thing off, a 99 quid downpipe off eBay. So we'll see how this thing goes. Now, if I remember rightly, on my Golf R, the downpipe was an absolute nightmare to install. We actually had to remove the subframe. Well, not remove it, just sort of undo it and move it forward to get the original downpipe out.
The downpipe is the very front of the exhaust, which connects to the turbo right here. It's quite easy to access, it's just very difficult to get out.
But let's see if my experience has helped me this time. So actually getting to the downpipe, as I mentioned, is fairly easy. It's actually removing it which becomes hard. There's a clamp on the top which connects the downpipe to the actual turbo, and then there's a bracket which sits around the downpipe which supports it to the engine. With that off, I can raise the car up in the air, and here you can see the stock exhaust with the back box, a center silencer which will be completely replaced, moving along all the way down to the downpipe at the very front of the car. Now, as you can see here, it's a very tight gap to get the downpipe out between the body of the car and the prop shaft.
Now luckily, before I started fitting the exhaust, I grabbed myself a bottle of Y food. It seems the busier I get, the more I end up drinking one of these. Which is definitely not a bad thing. One, because they've sponsored today's video, and two, because, well, these pretty much do everything. Y food is a meal replacement drink. It's not a protein shake, it's not a diet drink, it simply replaces a meal. There's 26 vitamins and minerals in here. It's high in fiber, high in protein, lactose-free, gluten-free, and there's no added sugar. And this bottle is going to keep me full for at least 3 hours, which makes it the perfect meal replacement. Not only that, this shakes come in loads of different flavors, as you can see here. There's vegan-friendly options, and the packaging is 100% recyclable. So if you're constantly on the go like me and find yourself just nipping to the shop and grabbing some fast food, which isn't necessarily healthy, then Y food is the drink for you. You can grab a taster pack by clicking the link in the description box below, and with help from this banner appearing underneath me right now, you're going to save yourself a nice bit of cash. Thanks Y food, back to the exhaust. So after my Y food, I quickly cracked back on with getting the downpipe off. The next thing holding it to the car were the hangers at the front, which you can see me removing now. And then now I'm going to go back to the top of the exhaust to unclip the lambda sensors. The bracket which sits around the downpipe has got to come off and out of the car just to allow me to squeeze it through that gap. So here it is. And now I'm going to pop the car into neutral, and this is why. I've got to remove the prop shaft to give the downpipe enough room to squeeze out that gap. And by moving it into neutral, I can turn the prop shaft around so I can get to every single bolt. And now you can see the bolts at the back of the exhaust were completely rusty and, well, long gone. So it was easy enough just to get the angle grinder out and cut that part of the exhaust off. And now I can work on wedging the engine forward along with the subframe, just so I can pull the prop shaft out and move it to one side. Once that's done, it's the long process of trying to wiggle and squeeze the stock downpipe out. And after celebrating that we got it out, I can put the lambda sensor back into the stock downpipe. It's pretty easy enough to squeeze back up to where it should go. And then going to bolt it back to the turbo and plug in the lambda sensor. And now it's just a case of bolting all the subframe back up. And of course the S3 will need to be aligned after this as well, because all the suspension will be all over the place. Downpipe is finally on. If any of you have ever managed to do that on your own, then absolute mad respect points for that. I remember I did it on that small ramp and I was dying, and I was still dying on the 2-post ramp. Me and Liam, we've smashed it out, and yeah, we've got to do the YouTube special of starting it with just the downpipe on. It's just a YouTube religion. Okay, send it. Send it. Oh my God. Okay, that sounded absolutely terrible. Let's get the new exhaust on.
Why has someone drilled a hole? Why has someone drilled a hole?
Someone has drilled a hole in the exhaust. Wow. So now it was time to remove the stock exhaust and install the stone exhaust. And hopefully after this, it's going to sound and look amazing. Here you can see the stone exhaust here, nice and shiny with the back box at the back. And here's the stock back box. And the stone exhaust is a cat back exhaust, so it goes pretty much to the downpipe, and the stock exhaust you can see has that center silencer in. This exhaust we're installing from Stone here is one of their best sellers, and although we're installing it to an aftermarket downpipe, it's designed to fit onto the stock exhaust with no issues at all. What you can see me doing now is installing the valves on the back of the exhaust, which have got 3 modes, on, off and auto, but we'll get onto that later. But the actual craftsmanship of this exhaust looks really nice, and I'm excited to hear what it sounds like. What you can see me doing now is threading the new wires inside the car, because these wires are going to be the part that controls the valves opening and closing. We've got the wires up into the boot. Next thing I've got to do is thread them through the car, hide them all underneath the trims and get them to the very front. Where you can see me now unboxing the OBD device. This cable here plugs into the OBD port, connects to this stone box here, and I can hide this up behind the dashboard where the wires will connect into. Which
is all controlled by this Bluetooth device here, which will allow me to open and close the valves. Okay, we were almost ready to rock and roll, really. We literally had everything on, and we came to an issue.
So, as most of you may know, the Audi S3 comes in a hatchback and a saloon. Liam, do the honours on showing what's happened.
Well, what's happened?
It looks
these just a little bit too short.
A tiny bit too short. Yeah, so we seem to have the hatchback exhaust system, which the hatchback would obviously finish here, and this is a saloon one. So yeah, it's not quite right, but almost right.
Now the thing is, after doing a little bit of research, turns out this whole exhaust system is exactly the same from hatchbacks to saloons. The only difference is these end tips here are a little bit longer on the saloons. So I really want to get this exhaust on, so I think what we're going to do is go to a sort of fabricator. Maybe Dave over the road should be able to help us, and we could hopefully extend these so we can have the tips out and finish this thing for good. But it doesn't mean that we can't get the first start up and figure out how these valves work with the open and the closed. Okay, so this is a cold start on an Audi S3 with a stone exhaust with a downpipe as well, with no exhaust tips. Not that that's going to make any difference to the sound. Send it, Liam. Okay. Oh. Is that valve open? Oh, that's valve's closed. Okay, it's not too bad. Valve's open. We're gonna let it warm up, and then we're gonna give it a few revs. Okay, a few revs. Oh, it actually sounds. And that actually that actually sounds wicked. Oh, that sounds sick. That sounds sick. It's not like deafening. It's not actually like. It's not like. That sounds really good. Valves closed, rev. Valves closed. So valves closed, rev. And we're back to Hoover status again. And then valves open. That is sick. It does sound really good. I'll give it to Stone. They've smashed it on this because it does sound really good. Well, that front splitter has made a world of difference. It now follows the lines all along the side skirts and into the rear diffuser. It looks just 10 times better from the front end now.
It sits so nicely aired out. Liam's going to be over the moon with that, but there is one more thing that we've got to sort out.
We've got to get these exhaust tips fitted to the back of the exhaust to finish it off nicely. This is the cherry on the cake, but obviously we need to extend the back of the exhaust, so I'm going to head to a tyre shop now.
And just like that, the exhaust tips are on. They are looking smart, matching the carbon spoiler as well. They are looking sick. Look at that from behind now. It looks so evil.
All we need to do now is test it on the road, but first, let's address this coolant problem.
So at this moment right now, we only have a fault for low washer fluid, easily sorted, the suspension, which we know, and well, that's it.
But every so often, a light pops on the dash to tell you to stop driving and to check the coolant level.
Now, when you check the coolant level, everything seems to be fine, and sometimes the old off and on job seems to do the trick to carry on with no warning light.
Now, the first thing I checked before anything was the coolant temperature. It doesn't actually have a gauge on the dashboard, so I had to plug in VADCOM, had a look, and the coolant temperature seemed fine, nothing over 95 degrees, and the coolant fans work.
Now, these Audi S3s, well, these TFSI engines have a really common problem for the water pump and the thermostat housing to fail.
Not only that, the water pump and the thermostat housing are a nightmare to get to, and also £380 plus VAT to get one.
Now, I've had a look around the water pump, which is right at the back here, and I can't seem to see any leaks coming from it, and the coolant doesn't seem to be dropping.
But that might not necessarily mean that it's not failed. It might not even be pumping the coolant around the engine, and that's why the light could come on.
But before I went ahead and spent over £400 and a lot of hours of work of changing that water pump and the thermostat housing, there's one thing that I wanted to try first, which fingers crossed is going to be the fix.
Now, if you remember rightly in a previous video on the Audi S3, the actual coolant bottle was damaged and I replaced it with a brand new second-hand one, which is obviously came from a scrapyard of some sort. Now, inside the coolant bottle it's a level sensor. You can sort of see the two little electrical prongs inside the coolant bottle there, and that is all part of this coolant bottle, and this one is actually brand new from Audi. It was only £30. Now, if the S3 thinks the coolant level is low, then it will pop that light on the dashboard. So I'm kind of hoping that there is a faulty level sensor in this coolant reservoir, and that's the issue, not the water pump. But there's only one way to find out, and that's to switch it over and just see how it goes. It is literally amazing how much a car can be brought to life with a decent exhaust. Now the S3's got that signature DSG exhaust note change, listen. Now inside the car, S3's Golf Rs have the tendency to have a drone, and well, with the valves open, this is quite loud inside the car. Just take a listen. But that's why we have this button right here, and if I click on, now the valves will close in the exhaust, making it, well, almost quieter than stock. Take a listen. It's literally almost unnoticeable now. And then we also have the button auto, which you can see here. Now that keeps the valves closed until we hit a certain rev point and then opens up. So it sort of knows when you're sort of giving it some beans, but it's really good. It's a nice system, but for me, valves have got to be open all the time. Any guesses on what I'm about to be spending the next few hours on doing?
You guessed it right, the water pump and the thermostat housing. How great.
Now luckily I managed to grab a water pump and the thermostat housing for a fraction of the price that Audi wanted, which is a good thing. The bad thing is I've got to replace it.
Well, the coolant bottle, it did work, but the coolant has gone somewhere else, and I'm pretty sure it's coming out from the water pump / thermostat housing. So, well, let's just get on with it.
So the inevitable happened. The thermostat and the water pump housing seems to be leaking. I couldn't really see where any coolant was going, and there was none on the actual under tray, but it's going somewhere, and with a little torch I could just see a slight bit of sort of corrosion around the water pump. Now actually removing the water pump and the thermostat housing isn't too hard, it's getting to it, which is the hard part. To give myself the maximum amount of room, I'm going to actually remove the two fans which sit in front of the radiator. This way I've just got way more room to work with. The thermostat housing and the water pump is just located underneath the inlet manifold. So you guessed it, we're going to have to remove the inlet manifold, which consists of disconnecting a lot of hoses and a lot of these T30 bolts, as you can see here. One for the top and one for the bottom. And also on the inlet manifold are a set of injectors, which means that the fuel lines are going to have to be pulled off as well. With the T30s out, which actually hold the inlet manifold to the block, there's one more thing holding it to the car, and that's this little bracket here that you can see me undoing now. With all the bolts and all the hoses disconnected, it's just a case of wiggling the inlet manifold out now, which sounds a lot easier than it actually is. Now we can see the inlet ports, which we've previously cleaned, so we don't need to do that again, and the water pump. But don't let that fool you, it's still not an easy job from here. We've got to get the water pump off the car. If I remember rightly, there was 4 T30s connected to the actual block of the car, and there was also a toothed belt on the side. Now I was pretty confident that the water pump wasn't timed to anything because the cam belt is on the other side of the engine. So I just slid the belt off the top of the water pump using a screwdriver. The belt is really small, it only goes around a bottom pulley, which is a sort of balance shaft, and then around the water pump. Okay, so after all that, I think, well I hope, I've found the problem. Got the old water pump off, and as you can see here, like the sort of little corrosion and that's where it looks as if it's been leaking. Hopefully you can see that. Now, it's belt driven and it's on like a little balance shaft, the other part of the belt. So I'm gonna have to replace the belt, put it all back together, and then hopefully it works. But just look at the state of in here. It is completely stripped apart. And to let you guys into a little secret, Liam's gonna be driving Monaco with me in the Lamborghini, and also Chris from Max Facts is coming as well. So I hope, for Liam's sake as well, that this goes back together properly. Let's get that water pump and thermostat housing back on. Before I put the housing back on, I've got to make sure I cleaned up all the surfaces where it mounts to the actual engine to ensure we get no more leaks after this. Now, as I mentioned before, the water pump is on a toothed belt. And once I've mounted the water pump to the car, it was really difficult to get that toothed belt on. One technique people use is to actually turn the engine over so you could turn the belt onto the water pump. But as I was by myself at this point and I only had one set of hands, I couldn't do that. So I actually ended up removing the water pump, tilting it to the side to get the belt on, and then levering it back to the place where it was meant to mount and then bolting it back up, which seemed to work no problem, and I can't see why you couldn't do that. With the belt on the water pump and the water pump mounted to the engine, it was just a case of doing everything in reverse, making sure that I connect every electrical connector back up and connect all the coolant hoses back up. And that should be job done. That was, if you're ever thinking about doing that on your S3 or Golf R, it's a nightmare. I hope it works now. All I've got to do is start it up, make sure there's no water leaks, and then fingers crossed that has fixed it. Right, Liam's gonna start it up because he's done so much work here. Start it up. Come on, girl. I definitely connected all the fuel lines, I'm sure. Or maybe I didn't. Take the key out. Pull it. Oh, are you in park? Yeah, put it in. This time. Oh, don't do me like this. Thank you. Okay.
Do you want to pan to Chris Slicks for Max Facts? So when you change your coolant housing, there's 7 things you need to connect.
Fuel line going up there. I feel like I've not plugged something in.
There should be a return, shouldn't there?
Yeah, here's a fuel return. Okay, why is it not starting? It's not sparking now. Right, back at the point now where I've taken everything back off to see if I've missed anything. I was worried that the water pump was timed with that sort of balance shaft. It's not. Yeah, I can't see what I've not unplugged, and now I'm going to put everything back together, and if it starts up, I'll be happy but sad because I don't know what exactly it was. Right, I basically took everything apart and put everything back together. I'm going to start it this time because I feel like Liam must have jinxed it. Come on. Please. Let's go, come on. That throttle body isn't plugged in. Yes! Please tell me that worked!
I fixed it. The cabby. That's better.
Let's go! Okay, so only time will tell now whether the coolant will hold and we won't get any more issues. God knows why it didn't start up the first time. We have no idea. Well done, Chris.
Thank you, mate. I'm here all week.
Well done. At least we have a good sounding exhaust. I don't know how an exhaust video ended up being changing a water pump and God knows, anything can happen. But now it's time for Liam to test out his exhaust. Let's take this out. Hopefully he enjoys it. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. See you in the next video. If you've enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.